You're driving home from work. Red and blue lights flash behind you. You pull over, heart racing. The officer walks up, asks for your license, and then drops the line that sounds completely harmless. Where are you heading tonight? You think it's just small talk. You answer politely. And in that moment, you just handed the officer exactly what they needed to extend the stop, search your car, and potentially arrest you. This is educational content only. For specific legal guidance, consult a licensed attorney in your jurisdiction. I've spent years analyzing hundreds of traffic stop cases and reviewing body cam footage. I've seen this single question turn warnings into arrests more times than I can count. Today, I'm going to show you the 3 exact phrases that protect you from this trap, why officers are trained to ask travel questions, and the Supreme Court case that proves you must speak up to stay silent. Let's jump right in. When an officer asks where you're going or where you're coming from, this is not friendly conversation. It's a tactical interrogation technique designed to do 3 things. First, establish a timeline. Second, look for inconsistencies in your story. And third, build reasonable suspicion to extend the stop beyond the original traffic violation. Officers are trained in what's called context framing questions. These are questions that seem casual, but actually gather intelligence. According to case law and police training materials, travel-related questions serve a specific investigative purpose. They want to know if your story makes sense with the physical evidence they can see. Picture this. You get pulled over for a broken taillight at 11 p.m. The officer walks up and says, "Evening. Where are you coming from tonight?" You say, "Just leaving work." He looks at your suit and tie, nods, and says, "Long day, huh? Where do you work?" You tell him. Then he says, "And you're heading home now? Where's home?" You give your address. Seems harmless, right? Here's what just happened. The officer now has your work location, your home address, and can calculate whether your route makes sense. If you're 20 miles off the direct path, that's suspicious. If there's luggage in your back seat, but you claimed you're just going home from work, that's inconsistent. If you said you were coming from work but you're in casual clothes at a time when most offices are closed, that raises questions. Officers compare your statements with physical evidence they can see through the windows. They're trained to look for red flags. A suitcase when you said you're just running errands. Out-of-state plates when you claim you live locally. All of these observations get combined with your travel story to paint a picture. And here's the kicker. Even if everything you said is completely true, the way you said it matters. Did you hesitate? Did you look away? Body cams capture all of this. In court, prosecutors can play that footage and argue your nervous behavior indicated deception. You might have been nervous because you were talking to a cop, but that context disappears on video. In a federal case analyzed by legal experts, officers used exactly this technique. A driver said he was heading to Detroit. The officer knew the route the driver was on was hours off the most direct path. That discrepancy became a key factor in establishing reasonable suspicion to extend the stop and call for a drug dog. The court called these dubious travel plans and ruled they justified further investigation. The driver thought he was just answering a friendly question. He had no idea that his answer would be used as the legal justification to hold him for an additional 40 minutes while a K-9 unit arrived. This is why Rodriguez v. United States matters. In that 2015 Supreme Court case, the court ruled that officers cannot extend a traffic stop beyond the time necessary to handle the original violation without reasonable suspicion of additional criminal activity. But here's the trap. If you volunteer information through casual conversation, you can give them that reasonable suspicion yourself. Your own words become the justification to hold you longer. Let me show you what this looks like in real time. Officer, license and registration, please. Where are you headed this evening? Driver, just going home. Officer, long drive home? Driver, not too bad, about 30 minutes. Officer, where's home? Driver, over in Riverside. Officer, Riverside? You're pretty far east, taking the scenic route? Driver, yeah, I guess, just the way I know. Officer, where were you coming from? Driver, just, visiting a friend. Officer, friend's name? Driver, Mike Johnson. Officer, and where does Mike live? Driver, I don't remember the exact address, somewhere near downtown. See what happened? The driver gave vague, hesitant answers. The officer noted the inconsistencies, not remembering a friend's address, being far off route, hesitation. All of this gets documented and can be used to justify extending the stop. Body cams record everything. Your words, your tone, your hesitation, and courts allow this evidence. Now let's take that exact scenario and show you the right way. Officer, license and registration, please. Where are you headed this evening? Driver stays calm, hands over documents, and says, I prefer not to answer questions, officer. Officer, just making conversation, you seem nervous. Something I should know about? Driver, I'm exercising my right to remain silent. Officer, you're not under arrest. You don't need to invoke rights for a simple traffic stop. Driver, I understand, officer. I still prefer not to answer questions. Am I free to leave? That's the difference. The first driver talked himself into reasonable suspicion. The second driver stayed legally protected. Both were polite. Both handed over required documents. But only one avoided giving ammunition. Here's the critical truth most people don't know. Silence alone is not enough. You must explicitly invoke your Fifth Amendment right. This comes from the Supreme Court case Salinas versus Texas in 2013. In that case, a man voluntarily answered police questions during a murder investigation. When officers asked if his shotgun would match shells found at the crime scene, he went silent. The prosecution used his silence as evidence of guilt. The Supreme Court ruled this was allowed because he never explicitly invoked his Fifth Amendment right. Justice Alito wrote that silence is insolubly ambiguous. You might be silent because you're asserting your rights, or because you're thinking of a lie, or because you're embarrassed. Unless you clearly state you're invoking your Fifth Amendment right to remain silent, courts can allow your silence to be used against you. This is the catch-22. You have to speak up to claim your right to stay silent. So when an officer asks where you're going, here's exactly what you say. Stay calm. Keep your hands visible. Make eye contact. And say clearly, I prefer not to answer questions, officer. If they push, you escalate to, I'm invoking my right to remain silent. If they keep pushing, I'm invoking my right to remain silent and I want to speak with an attorney. Then stop talking. Don't explain. Don't justify. Don't fill the silence. Just stop. These are the 4 core phrases you must memorize. Number 1, am I free to leave? This establishes whether you're being detained. Ask this after the officer returns your documents. If yes, leave. If no, you know you're being detained and can ask why. Number 2, I plead the Fifth, or I invoke my right to remain silent. This explicitly protects you under Salinas versus Texas. Silence alone isn't enough. You must say the words. Number 3, I want an attorney. This invokes your Sixth Amendment right. Once you say this, questioning must stop. Number 4, I do not consent to searches. This protects your Fourth Amendment rights. Make it clear. Make it unambiguous. Now, this varies by state, so let me give you specific examples. In Texas and Florida, marijuana is still illegal. Officers in these states routinely use travel questions to build cases. If you say you're coming from Colorado or California, states where marijuana is legal, that can contribute to reasonable suspicion for a search. In Colorado and Maryland, the smell of marijuana alone no longer establishes probable cause, but inconsistent travel plans still can. In every state, you have the right to remain silent about your travel plans. But how aggressively officers use this tactic varies widely. Before we go further, let me give you the physical safety protocol for the first 30 seconds of any traffic stop. This matters because it sets the tone for everything that follows. The moment you see those lights, signal right and pull over safely. Turn off your engine. If it's dark, turn on your dome light so the officer can see inside. Put both hands on the steering wheel where they're visible. This is not submission. This is smart. Officers approach vehicles not knowing what to expect. A calm, visible, controlled environment makes them less likely to escalate. Next, and this is critical, lock your doors. Roll your window down only 2 to 4 inches, just enough to pass documents through. This protects you in 2 ways. First, it prevents the plain view doctrine from expanding. If your window is fully down, anything the officer can see or smell in your car becomes fair game. Second, it creates a physical barrier that requires the officer to articulate a separate legal justification if they want to open your door or enter your vehicle. You can say clearly, "Officer, for everyone's safety, I'm keeping my vehicle locked and will hand you my documents through the window." This is respectful. This is legal. And this protects you. If you're recording, and you should be, announce it calmly. Say, "For everyone's safety, I'm recording this interaction as well." Don't hide your phone. Hold it in plain sight or mount it on your dashboard. If the officer questions why, stay polite. "Just for transparency, officer?" Never say "for my protection" because that sounds confrontational. Your recording and their body cam both capture the same interaction. This dual record is powerful. It shows you were calm, that you clearly invoked your rights, and whether the officer respected those rights or kept pushing. Here's another critical distinction. Is the officer asking or ordering? There's a huge legal difference. If an officer says, "Can you tell me where you're going?" That's a request. You can decline. If an officer says, "I'm asking you where you're going," that's still a request. But if an officer says, "You need to tell me where you're going," that sounds like an order. But it's not. The key question to ask is, "Officer, are you asking me or ordering me to answer?" This forces clarity. If they say asking, you can decline. If they say ordering, you can ask, "For the record, what is the lawful basis for ordering me to answer?" This creates a record. Most officers won't claim they're ordering you to answer travel questions because they know they can't legally compel that information without reasonable suspicion of a crime beyond the traffic stop. Let me show you one more dialogue example of how this plays out when you stay firm. "Officer, where are you headed?" Driver, "I prefer not to answer." Officer, "Why not? You hiding something?" Driver, "I'm just exercising my rights, officer." Officer, "If you don't have anything to hide, why won't you answer?" Driver, "I prefer not to answer questions." Am I being detained or am I free to leave? Officer, "You're being detained for the traffic violation." Driver, "I understand. I'm invoking my right to remain silent. I do not consent to any searches." Officer pauses, realizes the driver knows their rights, completes the traffic stop, and hands back documents. Driver, "Am I free to go?" Officer, "Yes." Driver, "Thank you, officer," and leaves calmly. But what if you don't stay firm? Let me show you how quickly this escalates when you keep talking. Officer, "Where are you headed?" Driver, "Just going to see a friend." Officer, "Which friend?" Driver, Just a buddy from college." Officer, "What's his name?" Driver, Jake Miller." Officer, "And where does Jake live?" Driver, "Over in Westwood, I think. Or maybe it's East Side. I'm not totally sure. Officer, you're not sure where your friend lives? Driver, well, I've only been there once before. Officer, when was that? Driver, maybe last month or 2 months ago. Officer, you seem unsure about a lot of things. Step out of the vehicle, please. Driver, wait, why? Officer, for my safety. Step out now. See what happened? Every answer led to another question. Every hesitation got noted. The driver thought he was being cooperative, but he actually gave the officer multiple reasons to be suspicious. Vague answers, uncertainty about details, all documented on body cam, all available to justify extending the stop. And now the driver is out of the car, which means the officer can separate him from any passengers, pat him down for weapons, and position himself to look inside the vehicle more carefully. That story might be completely true, but it sounds suspicious because it's unusual, and the officer now has documented inconsistencies that create reasonable suspicion even though no crime was committed. That's how you protect yourself. You stay calm, you stay polite, but you stay firm. Cooperation does not mean conversation. You cooperate by providing required documents. You don't cooperate by volunteering information that can be used to build a case against you. Let me be very specific about tone and emotional management. This matters as much as the words you say. Never be sarcastic. Don't roll your eyes. Don't sigh heavily. Don't match the officer's energy if they're aggressive. If they raise their voice, you lower yours. Your calm becomes more powerful than their aggression, especially on video. Maintain steady eye contact. Keep your voice level and clear. Use phrases like, I understand, officer, and I respectfully decline, and I'm not trying to be difficult, I'm just exercising my rights. These phrases acknowledge the officer's position without surrendering your protections. And critically, never curse. The moment you curse on body cam, you lose credibility if this goes to court. Now let's talk about passengers. You have the same Fifth Amendment right to remain silent, but officers will often separate the driver from passengers and ask each person the same travel questions, looking for inconsistencies between the stories. If the driver says they're going to visit Jake in Westwood, but the passenger says they're going to visit family in Eastside, that becomes reasonable suspicion. So if you're a passenger, use the exact same phrases. I prefer not to answer questions, officer. If they push, I'm invoking my right to remain silent. And ask, am I being detained or am I free to leave? In many jurisdictions, passengers can leave once the reason for the traffic stop is clear, unless the officer has separate reasonable suspicion to detain them individually. Here's the truth. During a traffic stop, you are not required to explain yourself. You are not required to account for your travel plans. You are not required to justify your route. You must provide your license, registration, and proof of insurance. In some states, you must provide your name. But beyond that, you have the right to remain silent. Use it. The smartest people aren't the ones who talk their way out of tickets. They're the ones who know when to stop talking. Stay calm. Stay respectful. Stay silent. And remember the 4 phrases. Am I free to leave? I plead the 5th. I want an attorney. I do not consent to searches. Memorize these. Practice them. Because the next time those red and blue lights flash, you'll be ready. Remember, this is educational content only, not legal advice. Always consult with a qualified attorney in your state for your specific situation. If this was helpful, share it with someone who needs to know their rights. Most importantly, remember to always plead the 5th.